morning, everybody. Today I'm going to be giving you my first ride impressions of the Kona aluminum version of the Libre. Woo! So this video isn't going to be a full-on review, but to give you a sense of what I initially feel when I ride this bike. And to make things interesting, right after we finish this test loop with the Libre, I'm gonna switch bike to the Magnesium Vast. Completely different bike, completely different pedals and everything. So be sure to check out that video as well. So the aluminum Libre, as you would suspect, is based on the carbon Libre. And although it shares the same name, there are slight geometry differences and also a big difference in terms of wheel and tire compatibility. Aluminum ships only with 700C, so you lose the wider 650B option. I'm joined with Laura, and what bike are you on? She was like, why are you even asking? In case you're wondering, it's the breadwinner.
No test bikes over here.
No. So the first thing I noticed kind of immediately is a somewhat highish trail. So it makes it really easy for me to ride no-handed. Also pretty stable on this kind of chunkier stuff. So the trail is definitely higher than, let's say, an endurance road bike with a trail in the mid-50s to the 60s. I think this is probably in the low 70s, which I feel like is a pretty good trail number for a gravel bike. Makes it pretty easy to cross track on the rough stuff without getting thrown about. Another thing I noticed is the high stack. Makes it really easy to get your handlebars up, and if you want that slam bar look without having to slam your bars, you can do it with this bike. I also appreciate that even though that this is a smaller size bike, it ships with pretty wide handlebars. Typically that's a struggle for me. I'll get a small frame, has narrow bars, not very comfortable, not very useful for bags, but this is a pretty wide bar. I think fit 46 for size 49 or 50 frame. So they've definitely taken some cues from the latest trends and have incorporated that in this bike. For controls, it's Apex 1x, nothing fancy but super functional. I actually like the shape of Apex levers. They tend to be friendlier on smaller hands, don't have as long of a reach as the hydraulic SRAM versions, and don't have that like absurd power of power thing going on. I think the bike's gearing is okay for kind of day rides or event rides, but any kind of loaded touring or bike packing, you're gonna wanna swap it to a mullet setup. I think the front chainring is 40 and the rear might max out at 42, so not a ton of low gears for really mountainous areas. So I think overall it's actually a pretty nicely spec bike. Some things could be better, but I'm not gonna nitpick. Comes in at a pretty affordable price point and is pretty good value. So far on this kind of flattish, gravelly stuff, not a problem. The tires, I believe they're 45 millimeters are sufficient. Geometry makes it really easy to handle. So the next part of this route is going to be a paved climb, and then a rocky climb, and then a rocky descent. So we'll see how this bike does on that terrain. So we're here on the paved climb. If I were to describe how it climbs in a word, it would be smooth. I definitely think that's the function of the longer chainstay at 440. Not jolty, but a nice and a pleasant, smooth, consistent seated climber. In terms of standing climbing, it's actually surprisingly a nimble climber standing. It doesn't have that typical slow turnover that I associate with bikes with this geometry. So even while standing climbing, still pretty fun. All right, so we're nearing the dirt climb section. And first thoughts as a paved climber, really smooth. Not like a jumpy kind of aero road bike or climbing road bike. Not too laggy. So far pretty impressed with how this bike handles. right, so we've done all the climbing that we're gonna do on this loop. Did the paved climb, this kind of chunky, gravelly climb with the occasional taut noggin. I have to say it climbed really well, really smooth. Even standing and climbing, it didn't have that kind of slow lagginess that I would expect. So far, really digging it. I have to check the geo chart, but it feels like it has a steepish seat tube angle that I like for steep climbs because it puts you in a really powerful position. There are definitely parts back there where on a shorter wheelbase bike, like my Bambora or bikes like that, standing and climbing, I would have broken traction in the rear tire. And this one, it held it all the way through. Now, we're gonna enjoy the view, take a little break, and then go downhill, and I'll wrap up there. And then we're gonna ride home and switch bikes and shoes and take the Magnesium Vast up here and see how that does. Should be interesting, completely different bike. So if you wanna see that video, be sure to check the link at the end of this video. All right, that section was pretty smooth and fun and stable, almost reminiscent of the Ritchie Outback and how it handles. Doesn't have the same springiness, but does have that smoothness. I will say I'm not a fan of these TRP brakes though. I know some people love them, not my favorite. I don't know if it's because they haven't been bedded in, but stopping power is just okay. Okay, next section is a little bit more double track, a little bit rougher. See how it does. How's your bike?
Oh man.
Is it okay?
You know, it's so nice of them to let me test this.
For a fee. So the Kona Libre Aluminum, a lot of surprises. I'm liking it a lot more than I thought I would. Has elements of a Cutthroat, has elements of a Ritchie, tire clearance of a Warbird, if that makes sense. But so far so good. Outside of some component things like the brakes and the handlebars, I like the width, I don't like the shape. Saddle's pretty comfortable. I think it's a pretty good value bike. More chill than the Rove, but also might be a little bit lighter than the Rove because it's aluminum. I'm not sure exactly, I have to get on the scale, but hopefully you guys enjoyed this first look at the Kona Libre aluminum version. Now we're gonna race home and I'm gonna switch bikes to the Vast, completely different and wear road clipless. So be sure to click on this link somewhere if you want to see that review. And until next time, keep the supple side down.